Welcome, heathens and witches, to the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast. Yeah, I'm John Norgrove. This is Julie Norgrove, and we're back at it again. But this one's the pub chat edition because I forgot to say the word pub chat. Woo, girl, we are starting fire today. So, this is a pub chat version of the Horn and Cauldron, whereupon we have a topic unresearched and we just sort of vamp on it.
Yeah, we just chit-chat about it.
What if this podcast was all vamps, no pyres?
But I want the vampires, so...
Right. But what I'm saying is think about fire safety, guys. You've heard me talk about this before. Be smart when you're using fire.
Oh, no. Drinking game early.
Oh, yeah. All vamp, no pyre, baby. Yeah. Okay, so before we get more off topic than makes any sort of reasonable or logical sense, today's pub chat conversation topic, as it were, is the mother, the maiden, and the crone. The maiden and the mother and the crone.
Every time I do that.
Goodness God. Okay, so genuinely off the top, first thing we want to talk about. Okay, do you say mother, maiden, crone, or maiden, mother, crone? And, I know that doesn't seem like it matters, because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't. But maiden, mother, crone, a thing that I actively had to think about to even make this point, genuinely doesn't exist in my mind.
It's a really hard way for me to say it.
For me, it's always mother, maiden, crone, and that's temporally dumb.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Dog,
yeah.
I'm not trying to hate. And listen, it's the way that I say it. If you say it that way, first of all, let me know what's up. Join the club. But also, is it just that I'm broken?
Or are you
and
also
the solution
broken?
Is that everybody else just is obviously it's maiden, mother, crone. And I just don't know what's going on here. But I cannot think of it in that linear time sequence.
So tell us,
what do you
when
think?
you think about it, do you automatically go maiden, mother, crone, or do you automatically think of it in a different order?
Yeah.
So
mother, maiden, crone, crone, so you get more money out of the slot machine. Whatever is going on with that.
So in our previous episode, which was Mebon 103, where we talk about living in harmony with the seasons, I was thinking about the themes of magic throughout the year. And one of the themes that is very common that that's associated primarily with Wicca and mid 20th century kind of magical users is this idea of maiden, mother, crone. See, I did it again.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, but that doesn't work for everyone. And there is not for men, it's just the oak and the holly king. So that's only a 2-phase thing. But I think that three phases really does make sense. But also, what about people? So first of all, what about men? And then second of all, what about people who identify as women but don't go through the mother phase, that don't become literally mothers, or people who don't identify with a specific gender, or people who just want to have something that's a little bit less gender normative roles. And totally. We started sort of thinking about this and figured that we would have this conversation
with y'all.
With you.
Yeah, with y'all. So okay, so first of all, if you do or do not identify with or care about said identification, right? Can you use or participate in or exemplify or otherwisely have some sort of interaction against, with, or upon maiden, mother, crone? 100%.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
If you're a dude or whatever and you're maiden, mother, crone is my jam, that's gangster.
Yeah, you're entering my crone era. Get
gangster,
it.
right?
Yeah.
As we've talked about in other podcast episodes, we don't do any of this weird gatekeepy bullshit that modern people do. That's dumb. We're not participating in that. You can kind of do whatever.
Gatekeeping is not a modern thing in witchcraft.
That's fair.
But still, we don't gatekeep here.
I thought modern, and then in my brain, I was I don't know, whatever, in the last 500 years. But that's not modern, or is it? Whatever's wrong with that thought. But no, we're not saying that like Maiden Mother Crone is some sort of deleterious or some bullshit,
or
like
is
that.
like garbage, or you should
Right.
like not use it.
But-
if you want to use it, if you like to use it, keep doing it.
This is more of an exploration of an idea. So first of all, can you Maiden Mother Crone like dude stuff, the male,
Yes.
right? And also, can you do Maiden Mother Crone but like verklempt of gender?
I think that you can.
Right, which I totally think you can. But also,
But I feel
we
like the
should
term
address the
limits
fact
it.
that the idea that dudes are just the oak and the holly, whatever the hell.
And they're really the
Which
only
I don't even know that I remember.
Really, the only
was a
purpose
thing
of
that
the oak and
existed.
the holly king is to procreate with the goddess. So when I was researching the previous podcast, I got a little curious with this. I was like, how, like this, I thought to myself, this feels like a very like 1970s sort of concept. And it's a little bit older than that, but it really sort of came into like,
That's
really
got
popularity. Hot. Yeah. So like mid 20th century, we're talking like around the time that they were creating like what we know as the modern witches' sabbats and all that other stuff is kind of when this came about, and actually came about from a guy who was a poet who wrote this, this book. I believe it's a book, but it may be just like a very long poem, called the White Goddess. And in that, he basically conceived of the idea of Maiden Mother Crone and the oak and the holly king. So in sort of more traditional Wicca, that sort of bleeds over into like witchcraft and everything in the like late 20th century. You have the mother, the maiden, the crone. It goes through the progression of the year. So during spring, the goddess gives birth to the baby, who turns into the oak king, and she is. So then after she gives birth to the baby, she becomes a maiden again, and then she mates with the oak king, and then she is pregnant, and then that's the mother phase. So spring into summer. So spring is the maiden phase, summer is the mother phase, and then winter she turns into the crone, and then that's when the oak king turns into the holly king, and maybe she mates with the holly king. Understand this, but like trying to explain this out loud, I am just like, what insanity I don't
understand this, and also that seems confusing. So let's kind of tighten up the topic. Let's refocus.
So anyway, my point.
How do you address gender in Maiden Mother Crone? So I think the first thing that we need to do before we talk about gendered Maiden Mother Crone is we need to boil gender distill gender out of Maiden Mother Crone, and get down to the root sort of topic.
Yeah.
As it were, the like source code of Maiden, Mother, and Crone.
Yeah.
Right? So what do you think the source code for Maiden, Mother, Crone is?
Well, I think that it really boils down to like a couple of concepts. There's sort of like innocence and youth. And then maiden. There is the maiden side of things. So innocence, youth, potential for things,
sure,
you know, and then I think the mother side of things is like, now you've got a little bit of knowledge, you're not quite so youthful, you're in a different phase of your life now where things aren't always new, you know, you're starting to use some of your knowledge gained during the maiden phase there, and perhaps you are in a caretaker type of a position where you have a child, perhaps you don't, but I think whether or not you have a child to care for, you still can be in this phase where you're applying knowledge learned, but still gaining knowledge. Like you still recognize that you have more to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think for the crone phase is where you have gained most all of the knowledge from here, and you're really acting as like a bit more in the mentor role towards all of them, whereas like in the mother role, you may be only mentoring the maiden role. But I think the crone is kind of the like wizened elder, you know, where it doesn't have anything to do with children or not children or how old you are or anything like that. But I think that it has to do with a progression of life where you're taking in the crone role your lessons that you've learned, and you are still learning new lessons, but very much less than in the mother role, and even more so less than in the maiden role. And you're really applying those and sort of finding that piece, that path, as well as you come closer to the end of your life, you sort of start to become like a bit more welcoming of it. You know, you only have, you don't have 30 summers left. Maybe you've got 10 summers left. You know, you're sort of making peace with the end of the journey on this plane.
Totally. So if I were to ungender those terms, I'm going to like 2 words this sort of a thing, right? Like, I don't think that the capacity for child production matters.
Yeah.
In this, I mean, I think that the easiest way to think about the concept is with regard to child production, because like that sort of hits deeper in the human psyche. So we're able to like, mother means obvious shit, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't think that actually matters, right? I think that the maiden is youthful exuberance, right? Which is freedom, which is like hyper expression, which is like trial and error, which is a seeking of knowledge. I think the mother is mature responsibility. Right.
Yeah.
So it is accepting and learning from the lessons that you experienced and the experiences that you learned from during that youthful exuberance state, whereupon you've reached a maturity of understanding and you are now capable of withholding grand responsibilities. Obviously, the simplest way, when you like, we got to think about language as a means to an end. Right? We use words to denote very complicated concepts in a simple possible way, especially when you're thinking about it in a bardic tradition, in a like passed down sort of a thing, in a like people chose words on purpose to represent these things, you know, playwrights, religious people, things like that, right? Their words aren't flat curves. They're not, it's not linear expression. They're representative examples, right? And I think that saying, well, you need to be mature and responsible, the easiest way to say that is you need to be a mother.
Yeah.
The most tippy top prime
but not
example.
That you need to cook like a mother, because that's ragu.
That's true. That's different, right? You just need to be one. But again, that's expression. You can be motherly and not be female, or even, or not be male, or not be associated with gender, or not be associated with the role of like the genetic bearer of this human creature. What with you're trying to teach, don't touch that shit or whatever, right? Motherdom is different than motherhood.
Yeah. In our circle of friends, we have this joke that I am the cardamom.
Right.
Because I am sort of like the group mom.
Yeah, you're just responsible and making sure that people of immature action, I'm looking at me specifically in the face, don't
do that. That makes this weird. That makes us weird.
Doing irrational and dangerous things. A thing that I like to do, irrational and dangerous things, right? So like I think that if the maiden is youthful exuberance, then the mother is mature responsibility, and therefore the crone is like arcane wisdom or ancient wisdom, and by that what I mean is that with experience gained from like So like primary experience, which is experiences that you've experienced, right? One time you were driving in a car and you were driving too fast and you hit some water and your car went like side to side or whatever, right? And you're like, it was a little dangerous. So you've learned from that. That's like primary circumstance. That's like primary evidence, right? That's like exemplification internally, right? But also, as you transition from maiden to mother, from youthful exuberance into mature responsibility, you now get to experience secondhandly from those who you are responsible for. And responsible for doesn't necessarily mean your children. Sometimes that's your friends. Sometimes that's your own parents, right? When your mom or your dad are like, well, but what about this thing? The alert from the government is transmitting signals into our brain, which is activating obvious and simple cure for a disease. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, right? And you now have to be the responsible, mature one to be like, all right, listen, let's talk about this from a actual science standpoint. Is that how frequencies work? No. Is that how vaccines work? No. Is this maybe just a hype train to make you spend money on bleach-based products because people who are trying to convince you of these things are terrible monster people who don't deserve our respect? Also, yes. Okay, so what this sounds like is, so instead of being youthfully exuberant and just reacting negatively to this, instead you have the maturity to take a step back and be like, oh my God, this is so dumb. But I can't say that's dumb because nobody's going to listen to me when I say that's dumb, even though it's obvious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to communicate with examples and with maturity.
Yeah.
And as a place of responsible consciousness in order to make sure that the people who believe in dumb stuff aren't trying to buy and consume dangerous products because an asshole on YouTube told you to, right? Therefore, I need to be this mature and responsible person, right? But when you mature into cronehood, in quotes, from that, right? You become you become like ancestral knowledge, arcane knowledge, right? Ancient knowledge. And that's because you don't just have the primary circumstantial evidence of you actually experiencing that event, but you also, because you were the mother character trope, if you will, because you were responsible and mature, you had to experience secondhandly other people's shit.
Yeah.
Right? And from that, you're able to gain an increased level of knowledge. It's just like you can achieve cronehood, for a lack of better words, in quotes, right? At an early age or when you're 75. That's entirely dependent on the manner in which you interact with the knowledge that's being given to you, right? So if you think about it that way, the 3-step process of maiden, mother, crone is essentially just like, I am interested in and studying everything. This is just high school, right? In like modern American high school, you study a little bit of everything, right? And motherhood is a time where like, now you need to be responsible for eating your own food. Don't just eat top ramen. That shit's got a lot of salt in it, right? Like, don't just go to fast food. Maybe get a hot plate or something. Oh, what is this? You have rent and you need a book. Maybe you should go to the library a little bit, right? So you have responsibility, as well as you move through and transition through motherhood TM, the time state in your consciousness, right? You are maturing from going, like being a freshman in college who's like, woo, parties, until you're like a senior in college and you're like, hangouts at best, my guy. I don't know about this woo parties shit. And then you graduate from college and you get a job, and like your friend who's still in college, or like some other people you know, or the local kids at the bar, when you're like, I just got done with work, and that is That is not what they told me was going to happen after college. I feel like I was maybe shenaned a little bit. But you're having a pint after work, right? And some college bloke comes in and he's like, woo, college, woo. And you're like, yeah, that's ungangster, my guy, right? But you have the maturity to not just be like, shut up, you know? I'm sad, shut up with that happiness. You're so young. Right? So when you're like not bringing that energy because of maturity, you're moving through this mother phase, which is a transitory period of maturity and circumstantial experience, secondhand experience as you like parent. But you don't have to just parent like your children or like adults you feel somehow weirdly responsible for because your friend group has one of those, because that sometimes is the truth. But like, because like people just come to you for help sometimes.
Yeah.
And so you have to, and sometimes that help isn't like some grand cosmic shenan. Sometimes that help is just like, listen, I thought that this knife whose code is A2473 was on aisle 4, but I'm not finding it on aisle 4. And you're like, oh my God, you young child. No, why would it be on aisle 24? It's obviously at aisle 23. And they're like, well, but the system in the machine says aisle 24. And you're like, yeah, is it ever right? Where do you think you work? What is happening right now, my dude? All of the knives are on aisle 23. Aisle 24 is camping equipment. Why would it be with camping equipment? Go to aisle 23. What is happening right now? Right? You know, you learn these things through like working in retail, obviously, you know, and like graduating from college and getting into the working world where you are forced to mature as a function of having to deal with slightly younger people and sometimes also slightly older people who like don't get it, dog. They just like don't know what's going on. So you have to be the adult and like you're not mature enough or old enough to do that and you're aware of that, but you cannot tolerate this guy being like, well, I don't understand why this isn't here. Or somebody being like, this is made of 100% cold pressed steel. And you're like, that's not what the box says. That's not what that is. I don't know why he's saying that. I'm going to interrupt you. No, it's not. Okay, listen. This is high carbon steel. I don't know what cold or pressed means. Ignore him, please. Let me sell this to you.
Isn't that where you put the steel in some water and then put it in the fridge overnight?
You just listen, you water your knife and then you put it in the freezer. Yeah. It's fine.
Cold.
Don't worry about it. Put a clamp on it. Then pressed.
Yeah.
Right?
Pressed.
Whatever. But, you know, it's that sort of transitory property. And then at a certain threshold in time, and we all, if you've worked in retail, everybody in retail who's worked in retail experiences their friend who's like 40 years older than them at the store, right? You're like, what is this? What is this big box store that I'm working with where it's like me and a bunch of children who are from high school who are just like, I need a job. But they don't know how to do anything. Ever at all, right? And then like one person who's like 45 years older than you, and at first you're like, I don't know who this lady is. And about 30 minutes into your first shift, maybe 45 minutes, dead max, you're like, this is the best person ever, and I will ride or die for this right now. No questions asked, fuck this corporation. 100%. Right? Because they've just got the wisdom. They're like, I know that it says that it's supposed to be on this aisle and it would make sense to be on this aisle, but guess what? It's on an end cap on the other side of the store because that's dumb and we can sell more over there and management doesn't like it, but they don't know what's happening. So fuck them. And you're like, yeah, shit, this lady just said all the things that I was thinking. Who are you? Now we're friends forever. Right? Like that energy. That's that crone energy, where it's because you've reached a place where you've experienced enough of your own shit and enough of other people's shit, where you've like transcended into just raw understanding, right? Acceptance of the fact that what is. Sometimes the app doesn't work. Sometimes the goal, the dream, the business, the product, the Instagram post, the fucking advertisement in whatever magazine, sometimes those succeed and sometimes those fail. And in the grand scheme of things, putting a bunch of ego into whether or not they succeed or fail serves no purpose. It doesn't do anything and it's useless.
Yeah.
Right? But you don't understand that until you've reached that like cronehood. Right? Where you know enough from yourself and you know enough from others who've shared their experiences with you, such that you're now being able to understand and solve problems for experientially in like a simple way without having to put too much effort into it, because you just know, right?
Yeah.
That's that like ancient wisdom sort of a thing, right? And to that end, right, how do we label Maiden Mother Crone, even though I've been for a while now? How do you label Maiden Mother Crone agenderedly, without gender?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of like the $1 million question, right? So, in thinking about
it would be nice if it was worth $1 million. I could take some money I'm poor. So, what's up?
Yeah.
Who isn't?
What's up?
This is 2023. It's a nightmare out there. Yeah.
So, originally, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking it would be the bud, the leaf, and the branch. So the bud being like full of infinite possibility and the ability to turn itself into something. The leaf is the mother portion of it, and that is it's gathering, it's shielding, and it has like a purpose working towards the greater good on this tree. And then the crone would be the branch, which is the superstructure that is left after the bud and the leaf have come and gone. However, in thinking about this more, I think a better way to think about it or to talk about it would be the seed, the flower, and the fruit. And that's because with the seed, you're talking about the beginning. And honestly, you could kind of put the seed at the end too. But,
I was going to say it should be the flower, the fruit, and the pit.
I was thinking
but I'm
about
thinking of
that.
stone fruit. If you're thinking of like stone fruit or apple, we got apples out here. It should be the flower, the fruit.
Yeah, see,
and
I was thinking
pit.
about that. And then I was like, no, you know what? I do like the seed as the beginning. The seed is sort of like this like grand worldwide cultural thing about beginnings, right? Seeds for humans are beginnings, not endings. So you're really looking at a beginning there. So you're looking at the archetype that is the sort of beginning. And the seed can still grow up to be anything it wants. You know, it's the beginning. It's endless possibilities. It's the first step.
A seed is a seed is you traded 3 of these beans for a cow, and your mom's gonna smack you what for, because that was not what I asked you to sell that cow for. Yeah, this is a Jack and the Beanstalk reference. Whatever, fuck you. Right? She smack you what for, because you just got some beans for a fucking whole ass cow. I mean, not a great cow. Listen, she was old, but like it's cow nonetheless.
She still gave milk.
Right? She still gave milk, right? So a seed can both be the smack what for and also the like thing what with you just got a goose that lays golden eggs and a fiddle or some nonsense and maybe save the kingdom.
So after the seed, then you have the flower, because the seed is what happens when the tree is ready to start creating fruit, right? Fruit being the end goal of this tree.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I said. The flower.
Yes.
So the next step is the flower. And the flower, like you already have gone from seed. You've already experienced growth, and a lot of it. But you still have more to go. But you're already pretty like, shall we say, fleshed out in this world. You already kind of understand what your I don't want to say purpose, because I think that that's too charged of a word, right? But you already kind of understand like where you are, what part of a forest you're in, what kind of a tree you are. You already kind of understand that. So the flower is the next piece of that puzzle where you're like, hey, I'm here, I'm good, and I'm gonna start to level up again. You know, because you've already done a whole bunch of growing. And then the fruit is the culmination, but also not really, of all of these things. So you've already gotten your growth. You already know what tree you are in this forest. You already know what it is that you're moving towards. And the fruit is sort of the juicy deliciousness that is all of the experiences and all of the knowledge that you have had, which you can essentially pass on as a gift. It nurtures. The fruit also nurtures as well. So I think that information, that experience, that knowledge, all of that lived stuff that's happened is part of that nurturing. And then I think the thing that I like the most about this is from the fruit, you also have the seed, which begins again anew. With, you know, sort of tying into like themes of reincarnation and cyclicalness, which also sort of helps with Mother, Maiden, Crone too. You know, we can see all of those. So I really like,
we're never going to say this
I'm never
right,
going to be able to say it right, except for the time that I'm not thinking about it and I do say it right and I'll never be able to do it again. So for me, I think that like a really nice way to keep the sort of like themes of this, but remove the premise of gender and the shackles of that kind of a thing would be to go seed, flower, fruit.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
What do you think?
If I were to think about it in the form of plants, I would make that delineation a little bit more large. I would say it's the sapling, the acorn, and the stump.
That feels wildly out of order to me.
A sapling is the beginning. A sapling can grow into a massive tree or become a small thing. A sapling is where you decide between a forest and a bonsai. A sapling is the beginning of that thing, right? It's not a seed feels like a baby. A sapling feels like a maiden. Insofar as a sapling already has some functional hold on its location in nature, but is now ready to decide, is it going to grow into a straight tree? Is it going to grow crooked, right? Like in bonsai, you train trees to grow like some straight and some to grow like at a steep slope or anything like that, right? A sapling is like, is sort of the beginning of the maturity of a tree. Right? When you first plant like a seed, you don't know if that's going to work. But once you have a sapling, now you know a tree's going to happen.
Yeah.
But what kind of tree? Right? You still have that sort of like youthful exuberance of very rapid growth, right? A tree grows fastest from its sapling stage because it's growing so quickly as its roots develop underground, as it adapts to environmental concerns with regard to, this is a warm climate, or this is like, for us, this is like a shadowy climate, so I'm going to grow leggy, like long of stem. Or this is a humid climate, I'm going to grow broad of leaf. Or this is a hot climate, so I'm going to grow tight cropped, so that way I can insulate myself, like the trunk of myself, in order to do these things, right? And the acorn representing the mother is because the acorn is both new growth, entirely undecided, but also responsible for the continuation of the growth that already happened, right? So the acorn experiences that dichotomy of life, where it is both the new thing and it's experiencing this novelty in life, but also is still representative of that from which it matured out of, right? An acorn is a dropped part of that tree. It's a genetic continuation, right? And the stump, to represent the crone, is because a stump can still sprout. It can still grow anew, but the stump reveals knowledge, right? Until you see a stump, you don't know how old a tree is. Until you count its rings, you don't know what that tree's experienced. From doing that, and if you're not from a place that has big ass old trees, this might sound insane to you. But like out here, there are a lot of places where you got like a big 20-foot tall ass slice of a tree in like a science gallery or a museum or some shit like that. And you can see like, oh, this is the big whatever the fuck fire or big whatever volcano blowing up, and you can see where that ring is thinner or thicker, or where it's, you know, discolored, or otherwisely damaged from some sort of natural issue or whatever. So as such, as the crone delivers knowledge from both the experience of the self and the experience of others. The stump teaches knowledge of its own life, but also how its life was affected by the ramifications of other things, right? Grand fires, volcanic eruptions, great floods, things like that affect the rings in that stump. So if you were to, ignoring the like life and death cycle of it, because I don't think that the Maiden Mother Crone necessarily has to do with the life death cycle and has more to do with a cycle of education, right? A cycle of wisdom. I think that the sapling, the seed, or the acorn, the sapling, the seed, and the stump, right? Which was the way that I would say it, is because that sounds nicer. It's got the same first letters.
It does, yeah.
Where the sapling represents the potential for a great future, the beginning of a new forest, the expression, the home of wildlife, spiders, and the place where squirrels will eat, and the place where birds will nest, and the place where a young person will sit underneath and experience first love or first loss, will carve their initials into the trunk. A sapling is the beginning of all that. A sapling represents all of that which will be, right? The seed is that which contains the secrets and the knowledge of the sapling, but is destined to provide a new path. It is responsible for the future, yet experienced and learned from its past, right? A sapling malnourished makes a seed of lesser success, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is both beholden to its history, but also capable of grand potential in the future. Though that sapling that grew that seed might be small of stature, the seed might grow a greater tree simply because of the way the seed's taken care of, because of the way the seed interacts with its environment. The stump reveals in truth the greater wisdom learned from that environment, from its life. A stump tells a story, right? Not because it's at the end of the life of that tree, because let me tell you, you cut a tree down. Often that shit's gonna come back with a bunch of sprouts, right? A stump isn't necessarily a dead thing, right? It's not necessarily the end of a cycle, but it's a stump always represents a revelation of knowledge. Because from a stump, we can learn how old was that tree. We can learn what did that tree experience. Did it experience great shadow, great cold, great chemical pressure, great flood? Because it affects the rings in that stump. It affects the way that that stump communicates, in quotes, its age, right? So I would say that the plant-based, ungendered version of Maiden Mother Crone is the sapling, the seed, and the stump. Mm-hmm. That which can be, that which represents both states, and that which represents what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I would quantify the Mother Maiden.
See, that
Crone
seed
that
part
way.
still throws me off. I can't get past that. I understand everything that you said, right? And I'm here for it.
It's like a pine cone. A pine cone isn't just because not all pine cones make trees.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Not all seeds produce a plant. If you've ever tried to start a garden from fucking seeds, you know that seeds, sometimes this seed, 5 plants. Sometimes the next seed, 0 plants. Fake seed. Dot. There was just a 3-dimensional dot you put in the soil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the seed is both representative of the knowledge learned, right? The history of the plant that seed came from, but also situationally addressed by like experience of other things, right? The environment. You plant a seed into too damp a soil, no seed, rot. You plant a seed into dry a soil, no seed, food for a bird or something.
Yeah.
This is just a dried ass seed. You know?
Yeah.
So to me, the seed is that central state. That state where it represents both youthful exuberance and mature and like arcane wisdom, because it's responsible for the future and it's mature in the fact that had that sapling never matured, it would have never produced seeds. From like a horticultural standpoint, a seed is the middle step. To me, a seed is the middle step of a plant, not the beginning step of a plant. Right? Even though we think of it as the beginning step, because that's the point where like we are like pulling it out of a bag we bought from a big box store and putting it into some dirt that we bought equivalently from that big box store for too much money. Why is dirt so fucking expensive, guys? But the
it's
seed
everywhere.
Gee, it's so much. But like, yeah, it's everywhere. But like the seed is that middle step whereupon how we care for the seed denotes that future sapling, right? But the quantitative quality of that seed, we have no true basal control over, because that's entirely dependent on the lessons learned from the sapling which grew it, the tree from which it was harvested.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I think of the seed as the middle step.
Yeah, see,
and not the beginning step.
It doesn't resonate for me that
way.
No, not at all. It does not resonate for me.
But to that end, right?
There are other ways that we could quantify this Mother Maiden Crone one, and you had a pretty great idea too. That has nothing to do with plants.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with the plants. So under that same logic, I was thinking like the pint, the bearer, and the drought, right? I like to think in things of alcohol because I drink a bunch. Obviously, this is pub chat, so... We have a whole themed podcast around me drinking and trying to remember the things that I said I was going to say. But insofar as if we are to take the way that we've currently defined the Maiden, Mother, Crone archetypes, right? They're bardic units of space-time. Then the pint, the glass, the vessel, as it were, is that which can hold. A pint glass can hold a beer, but you can put wine in this. I can fill this with water because I need a drink of water. I can fill this with milk because I'm having dinner and I'm 12 or whatever. People, I don't know who drinks milk. I'm not a milk drinker. But whoever the hell drinks milk.
Why did you even go to milk?
Yeah, it's just a different bev, right? I could put a soda in it because I'm going to a fast food. A glass, a vessel, right? A pint is infinitely capable of holding. So it is infinite of future potential.
Yeah.
Right? The bearer is that whom delivers the pint, that who fills it. So whereas a pint glass is self-dependent of volume, right? Its internal lesson is that of 16 ounces. Its external lesson is that of being filled with Racer 5 IPA, right? So it represents both a static model of its own reality with regard to volume, and it represents whatever is filled. This is the responsibility of the bearer, that who brings you a thing. A cup is a cup, but it has no thing filled in it, no volume, no value, except for that it can hold. So if the pint can hold, the bearer is that who brings you a held beverage within said pint. Right? And then the crone is the drought, that which is within. Because whatever your drought is, whether it's whiskey or mead or beer or wine or milk, whatever, right? That is an effort. That is a lesson in and of itself. Those are the rings of a tree, right? Especially when you think about this from fermentation science, which I like to think about a lot of things with regard to the mysticism of fermentation science, right? The vessel is that what holds potentially knowledge. Sometimes good knowledge, sometimes bad knowledge. We've all had a good pint, and we've all had a very bad pint. A very questionable $9 at a bar, right? And the bearer is that who delivers it. They're distinct from the pint, but they make it have value. An empty glass is value of lesson, obviously. It's a value of volume. But its value isn't of taste and consumption. It doesn't have the story of fermentation written inside of it. But the bearer brings the story of fermentation into it. And the drought, the crone, is that story of fermentation. It's that which holds the secret of transformation from grain to sugar to fermented alcohol, right? From wanderers to farmers to societies, because fermentation is the secret of life. Fermentation makes things that shouldn't last. It makes things that are boring exciting, for a lack of better words, right? Fermentation is wisdom. It's arcane knowledge. It's misunderstood for thousands of years, and even as understood, it's not science so much as it's cooking, right? Even though for the most part replicatable fermentation science is one of baking, right? One of accuracy in temperature and accuracy in ingredient. It's still the difference between a good beer and a great beer is not the ingredients, but it's the brewer who brewed it. It's the person who can smell that it's a little off, so I'm going to drop the temperature 2 degrees. It's the brewer who can taste it in the tank 3 days in and say fermentation is running a little wrong. I'm going to drop the temp or increase the temp on the fermentation vessel. So the drought isn't just a moment in time. It represents an entire hyper science of knowledge. It represents this cacophony of wisdom passed down through generation after generation from eons ancient, whereupon we have perfected being able to produce something as simple as an IPA, but as complex as an IPA. Because in the grand scheme of things, a pint glass has value. It's good. I have too many pint glasses because of how much I value them. But it's empty, right? A server, right? The bearer of the glass, that those who fill it, that which it is filled with, transitions a vessel free from form into something that contains, something that can splash, something that can spill, but something that can bring joy, something that can fill an emptiness, something that can take a steak and elevate it, that can take a meal and bring it higher, that can relieve a day because it was rough, right? That's the power of a bearer, is that they provide solace, they provide joy, they provide mess and story, right? But the drought itself, the thing within the glass, the beverage drank, is not just that solace. It's not just that clarity or that hiding, that thing that erases doubt or that thing that lets you talk to people you didn't know. It does those things, but it does those things with thousands of years of wisdom, because had that brewer not been trained by the person who taught him and the person who taught him and the books that were written, he would have never known to produce something that could do that to you. He didn't do it because it was going to do that to you. He did it because he knew that it could, because it represented something good, something pure of thought, like a beer, like a wine, like a whiskey, like a mead, like a whatever you want.
Like a milk.
Like a milk. Like a milk. Fermented milk's a thing, my guy. Listen, ask the Mongols.
You said it, and now I just have to continue.
Fermented milk is a thing. But fermentation is this sort of ancient magic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's alchemy in its like truest and purest sense. And because of that, it's able to make your evening better than your day was. It's able to let you loosen up to sing that karaoke song that you've wanted to sing for a few years, but you haven't had the confidence to do so. And now that you've done so, people are like, that's pretty good. And you're like, maybe I can do karaoke. Who'da thunk? I don't know what I was thinking beforehand, right? The drought has this sort of arcane power to it, right? It's the thing that like loosens social conversation. Can it also be dangerous? Of course it can. Like all arcane wisdom can be. Hundreds of writers have talked about this, right? So that's why, like, as much as I like, right, the sapling, the seed, and the stump, for me, it's the vessel, the bearer, and the drought. Because those are intrinsically mystical and magical states.
Mm-hmm.
Right? An empty vessel, that which is born unto you, filled with potential, and that which holds history in every single glass. But what it means to you is entirely up to you. Sometimes it relieves pain. Sometimes it's because it's a hot day outside and you're having to garden and a margarita sounds fucking absolutely fantastic right now. And sometimes it's this dreadful thing that you did not mean to order, but you're going to enjoy it anyway. Mm-hmm. And even from that, a lesson's learned. Because a drought teaches, right? And a bearer provides the opportunity for that education, and a pint, a vessel, is the means by which all education comes. So that's how I would think about those things in an entirely non-gendered way. As much as I am a plant person, and I would always think plant-based, I'm also a fermentation scientist deep down inside, which is just a very nice way of saying that I drink a tremendous amount. And so I would consider it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think that these are all really great ideas. And I think that really the thing that Maiden Mother Crone,
yeah, we're never going to say it right. It's fine, dude.
Is for each individual person to find the concept that vibes with them.
Yeah.
Because the thing...
Well, what does Maiden Mother Crone represent to you?
To you, yeah.
Right? Because mother may be something different to you than what it is to me or to Julie. And purely because we have different experiences. And I think that this is kind of the real root of this, triple balance point, right? This triple point of the state of matter, within like magical consciousness, is that like your interpretation and representation of Maiden, Mother, or Crone does not have to be the same as mine, right?
Yeah.
And because we have through time been taught that the term we use is Maiden, Mother, Crone, does not mean that those are the terms that best represent or like attach to our thoughts. But because it is the most popular, we are beholden to the language.
Yeah.
Right? Therefore, when you hear somebody talking about getting into knitting and entering their Crone era, right?
Or doing their granny hobbies.
Right. You don't have to like be like, oh, I didn't know that this person had a kid who had a kid. You're not thinking that at all. You're like, they made a joke about knitting.
Well, it's an archetype.
It's because it's transcendental because of the nature of it being an archetype. So to that end, what do you think a gender neutral version or a modernization or an interpretation into the language framework upon which you work in or through would best represent Maiden, Mother, Crone for you out there?
Or do you think that Maiden, Mother, Crone
is the
works
best
for you? And you know,
well, we've always used Maiden, Mother, Crone, and we only just started thinking about using a non-specific term and greaterly defining those three states.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because you did the podcast episode, the research, and you sent me a text message about it, and it made me like think about it.
Yeah.
I never thought about it. Maiden, Mother, Crone. That's obvious. Like, does it matter that, like, I'm a dude? No. I've literally never ever thought about that.
If it did matter to you, not that that's a problem or isn't a problem, like, you know, if it did matter to you, would that turn you off from the concept of it? Would you not be able to connect as well to that idea of those archetypes?
Well, or do you break those archetypes down in a different place, right? Is Maiden Mother Crone, like, too simple? Is it not simple enough? Are you just the Oak and the Holly King? Right? You're just a binary system instead of a 3-body problem, right? Yeah, you're physics, whatever.
Fantastic book.
Yeah, it's
a
great book. Yeah, weird math, not the book, but the actual math for a 3-body problem.
I mean,
because that's real math.
There's math in that book, and it's also weird. So, you know,
whatever. It's physics.
So anyway,
but
tell
like, what
us
do you think?
what you think.
Yeah.
Comment below. Also, while you're doing that, give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you're listening to us on one of the podcast networks, hit download or whatever. Subscribe to us there.
The channel.
Leave us a review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that would
Check
help.
out our socials. And, you know, share us with your friends. And if you really like what we're doing, we also have a Patreon that you can check out and be part of our patrons.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us what you think. We had a lot of fun sort of really thinking about this and really sort of like fleshing it out here with you all, and would love to hear what everybody thinks.
What do you think?
This.
What's your opinion? What do you think about what we just said? Is everything that I just said wrong and you disagree with it? And if so, why? How? When? Who? Where? Whatever. Yeah. But yeah, either way, I have been John Norgrove. This has been Julie Norgrove. This has been the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast pub chat edition because of the drinking and whatnot. And we will catch you guys next time for more topics. Let us know. What do you want us to talk about for these kind of things? You can hit us up everywhere for that stuff.
Yeah.
And we will catch you guys next time. Stay magical, folks.
Yeah. And don't forget, breathe in self-confidence and breathe out self-doubt.